Hello, Veteran Outdoorsman here again today. We're going to do a review on what I think is just a really, really cool rifle, or carbine as it were, the SKS, specifically Chinese SKS, and specifically the older SKSs, and I'll explain the difference here in a minute, but here we go. Standard Norinco manufactured Chinese SKS, cleared, locked in place. Really cool rifle. I can remember when I was younger, these things selling at gun shops for. Actually, this one's got a import stamp. I just noticed that. Selling for around 100, $150. The Chinese ones. Russians, as long as I've been alive, have always brought a pretty good price. Yugoslavians, not that long ago, could be had 125, $150, but they've all gone up because what happened? The supply dried up. They were imported in large quantities, they were sold cheap, then the supply dried up. Well, I was able to get this one not too long ago. Actually in really good shape. Look, somebody put some walnut colored stain on it. I'm not a big fan of the fact that they did it, but it doesn't look bad. Stock's not all nicked up, but I don't really know if they sanded it down or what. But we'll go into this a little bit. It fires a 7.62 by 39 cartridge, which is the same cartridge fired in the AK-47. The SKS design predates the AK-47 by a few years. In Russia, was used as a secondary weapon. In many other countries, was used as a primary weapon. These weapons saw use in Vietnam, Korea, probably Afghanistan. I mean, they've been used a little bit of everywhere. Um, in Vietnam, Korea by the other side, not by us. But they're just a nice, rugged weapon. It is not based on the Kalashnikov gas system, which many people think it is. It is not. It is a similar gas system with the tube over the barrel, but it is not the same. They are very rugged, fairly light for what they are. You can lighten this one considerably with a flathead screwdriver. Take this bayonet off, but I've left it on for now. Got standard military sights. Regulated out to 1,000 meters, which is probably pretty ambitious. Out to say 300 meters for a man-sized target would be pretty well. Maybe out to 5 in the right hands, but out to 3 to hit a man-sized target somewhere would be pretty doable with this. Lots of modifications can be done. Williams makes a peep sight that you can replace this rear with. It goes in the exact same place. It's basically a ghost ring sight. I've been told they work pretty well. Some people have had some issues with them being a little loose, but they work. Especially if you've got older eyes and you have trouble with the notch rear and front post. And I'm probably going to look at doing something like that. There's another site, and I can't think of the manufacturer, where it mounts right here on the back of the receiver, and you can get one that is adjustable for windage and elevation, gives you a much longer sight radius, should improve your practical accuracy. Might be worth, if you've got one of these laying around, might be worth taking a look at. This particular rifle was manufactured in the mid 60s. And some of the ways you can tell the ages and things is where the sling mounts are. Also, as you get into, say, the late 80s, 90s, etc., they started using stamped parts instead of machine parts. This is all machined. The receiver cover, the sights, the floor plate, or the box magazine, the trigger guard, everything is machined. As they moved on, they, like many manufacturers do, they cheapened their processes some and went to stamped parts. This one does not have any stamped parts. You'll see some hybrids, a mixture of stamped and machined parts. As any military weapon happens, they see use, they get busted, parts get replaced, etc. Many of these were sold as sporting rifles to the United States without the bayonet. They were imported just as sporting rifles without the bayonet. Many of these will have the stamped parts. They're later manufactured rifles. This one, though, is all machined. Another difference, and something that many people will point out and say, well, the Chinese isn't as good because it doesn't have a chrome line bore. That's not true. There are some of the sporting rifles very, very late in the game had pin barrels or had non-chrome line barrels. I've been told, I've never been able to find that, but for the most part, all the Chinese did have chrome line bores. The ones that did not have chrome line bores were the Yugoslavs, but they're very well built guns, so I wouldn't worry about that either if you have one of them. This one has a chrome line bore, which is also good if you happen to come into some corrosive ammunition, which is very easy to find. Getting less easy, but you can find corrosive ammunition, and it does help protect a little bit with that. It makes it cleaning easier. It doesn't help the accuracy like some people think, because you're adding something else to the bore, and just clean, straight rifling is the best for accuracy, but there are definite advantages, and for a field gun, chrome line bore is the way to go. This one does have chrome line bore. They'll say it's not as good, the Chinese aren't, because they have pin barrels. Later manufacturer did have pin barrels. Early models had threaded in the receiver barrels. This one is threaded. This one is not pinned. I'm not going to disassemble it to show you the difference, but if you took the stock off of this thing, you'd be able to tell there is no pin. This is threaded. So, one, the barrel can be replaced easily if there was a catastrophic failure. If I was a dum-dum and left it with corrosive ammunition for months without cleaning it, and it rotted the bore, etc., etc., potentially that barrel could be replaced. I don't know too many people that make aftermarket barrels for an SKS, and an original, chances are it's not going to be any better shape than what you had to start with, but it could happen. Most people just believe that, and I will go along with this, that the threaded barrel will be more accurate, more rugged, more reliable, because something that's just pressed and pinned potentially could have some slop in it. Not noticeable wiggle slop, but it's just not as precise of a fit as a nice threaded fit, and I'll agree with that. But again, even the ones with the pressed in barrels, not a big deal. But these are very, very well built. Now, you get an early year SKS, Chinese SKS, you get a Yugoslav SKS, you get a Russian SKS, you get a well-built weapon. Again, fairly light, not quite as light as my Winchester 94, but fairly light, well-balanced. I mean, right there, and that's where you want it. Right there below the magazine, that's where you want it to balance. It's good. They shoot well. I haven't fired this one in particular. I have fired several over years, Chinese, Yugoslav, and Russian. There are also Romanian and some other variants. I don't want to leave those out. My first deer rifle was a Chinese, very similar to this. And, you know, being able to kill a deer reliably at 100 yards, it was more than accurate enough for that. 3-4 inch groups at 100 yards, more than accurate enough for that. With good sights and the right person behind the trigger, you should be able to shoot somewhere 2-3 inch groups easily. I've heard of subminute angle. I know I'm not that good, not with this type of a weapon, or with most actually, but it may be possible. There are several companies that make a kit where you can take this receiver cover off, replace it with another one that has a Weaver or Picatinny rail, and you can mount a scope right on top of it. Some of them just have integral rings. You can mount the scope on it. Some of them even come with the scope. Not expensive. Not a high dollar scope. Certainly not a Leupold or a Zeiss or a Nikon or nothing along those lines. But something to get you going. And if you're one of those people that just has to have a scope, it's possible with this weapon. Keep this though, because it's going to add to the value of the rifle if you ever decide to get rid of it down the road, or when you finally kick the bucket and your wife's selling it, she'll get more money out of it. Maybe her boyfriend will want to go back to fixed sights. No. But, yeah, that was a bad joke. But, very well built weapon. Some sort of hardwood, fairly durable. They do come with this little spring-loaded deal here for a cleaning kit. Mine didn't come with the cleaning kit. Mine didn't come with the sling either. I need to find one. This does have all matching serial numbers, which if you care for collections, that's something to look at, is all matching serial numbers. But it's a pretty nice weapon. Does have a bayonet. I'm not going to extend that right now. Right now, the only purpose it serves for me is adds a little extra weight for the range, keep you a little more steady. Loads with stripper clips. Yes, clips, not magazines. This is the magazine. Loads with stripper clips, or just one at a time. I've also seen guys open it up like this and turn the weapon upside down, drop rounds in it, and close it like that. I don't particularly like that. It's simple enough to push a few in or to use stripper clips. Slide them in. They just goes in this little notch right here. Load up 5, 10, whatever. This holds 10. Push them down. Semi-automatic, obviously. 7.62 by 39, fairly low recoil. Short length of pull on these weapons. May be useful for a smaller person. Has a safety here, which is a trigger block and a disconnect. It doesn't just block the trigger, although that would be sufficient. But like other standard safeties, it also keeps the firing pin from going forward. At least that's what I've been told. I've never disassembled one of these, but for sure it blocks the trigger, and you can't fire at that point. Not a great trigger, not a horrible trigger, not smooth by any stretch of the imagination. It's not gritty, but it's just got a little bit of, little kind of gummy. Not horribly heavy though. Something you would expect in a military weapon of this age, especially a comm block weapon from China, Russia, Yugoslavia, etc., etc. Useful for hunting smaller to medium game such as coyotes, deer. Probably be more than fine for antelope, but they're typically shot at longer range, so this isn't something you maybe want for that. But for a brush gun, not driving through brush, but for a gun close quarters, something in thick woods where your shots are going to be quick and close, this may be the rifle just for you. You can still find these at a fairly reasonable price, a few $100, up to maybe $500, depending on what model, what manufacturer, etc. Um, and they're pretty well ready to go, but you can modify them the way how you feel fit. And most of these modifications don't involve permanently altering the weapon, which is nice. Many purists think that you should never permanently alter it. Many purists think you should never replace the part, even if you didn't permanently alter it. If that's the way you feel, that's fine. I don't really agree with that. I buy a gun to use it, and if it's not quite the way I want it, I'm going to make it that way. But I don't like to permanently alter them because it does hurt the value of the firearm later on if you decide to get rid of it. And not everyone has your taste, so they may not like what you did to it. Again, like I said, fairly accurate. Let's talk about the cartridge for a little bit. 7.62x39 has been compared year after year after year to the 30 Winchester centerfire or 30-30. And it is similar. The ballistics are similar as far as velocity and trajectory. The main difference being that the 7.62x39 typically shoots a 123, 125 grain bullet, where those velocities are achieved with a 150 grain bullet out of a 30-30. That's a difference. You can find some 150 grain ammo for this rifle. And it does obviously go a little bit slower. A lot of rifles, be it an AK-47, SKS, etc., have trouble feeding the longer bullet, so you want to be careful there. But it is possible to find. Wolf makes a 150 or 154 grain. I believe Cellier and Bellet makes a 150 grain, but I believe it's a round nose, and I've heard that some people can't get them to feed in this, and some don't have a problem. Something to think about. But the 123 grain, 125 grain is typically not an issue. Hornady makes some really good ammo with SST bullets. You can buy some higher end ammo for these. You can buy really cheap ammo. Silver Bear, Brown Bear, Wolf, etc. Pay attention to those, though, because they have what they call a bimetal bullet, which is typically some sort of iron or steel jacket with a thin layer of copper, generally what they call a wash, not a plating, but a copper wash, and it looks like a copper bullet. But if you were to take a knife or a file or something, it's nice and shiny silver underneath. Hold a magnet up to it, it's magnetic, meaning it has iron in it, meaning that if you take it to an indoor range or some outdoor ranges, they're not going to let you fire that ammo. The copper jacketed ammo is somewhat more expensive. Many people would argue more higher quality because it tends to be brass cased, tends to be copper jacketed, maybe somewhat easier on your rifling. Tends to be boxer prime, cleaner burning, etc. So I would suggest get some fun ammo, some Wolf, some Silver Bear, Brown Bear, Tula, and also get some brass cased, copper jacketed ammo. Soft point, hollow point, full metal jacket, whatever your tastes prefer. If you're going to hunt, don't go with the hollow points. The hollow points, though there's been plenty of deer, and people are going to argue with me, plenty of deer have been killed with them, those hollow points really aren't designed to expand, though they will. But stick with a soft point bullet. It's going to expand more reliably. Those hollow points are more like a target hollow point, and many times they'll act like a full metal jacket. Sometimes they'll expand. Sometimes they'll just fragment. You don't really know what you're getting when you get one of those in 7.62x39. So if you're going to hunt, the soft points is the way to go. So I would stick to that personally. I've had, you can't find this anymore, but the old China Star ammo was, you get cheap full metal jacket ammo, worked pretty well. Smelled like ammonia pretty bad, but it worked pretty well. Maybe you're somebody that's hoarded a case of that, firing this gun just fine. But get you some cheap steel cased ammo for piling up at the range. Get you some brass cased ammo in case you go to a range that doesn't allow that type of ammo with the bimetal jacket. Get you some good hunting ammo. Winchester makes their deer season load. I've heard very good things about it. I believe they still make just their standard PowerPoint. Cellular and Bell at Fiocchi all make soft point ammo as well. Good stuff. It's still cheap. You can still find ammo, hunting ammo, for $10, $15 a box. 20 would be for fairly high-end stuff. So you still get pretty cheap ammo, even when you're talking better quality ammo. If you wanted to hand load, obviously the brass cases are the way to go. And that is available for this weapon. Most people will buy the cheap steel case stuff and just pile it up and leave their empties lay. Your range may not allow you to leave the empties lay, and it's not a good practice anyway. Point being, though, you don't have to worry about it. You just scoop it up, throw it in the trash bin. No need to collect it. Brass can be worth some money, so even if you don't hand load, collect your brass, save it, turn it in a recycling center when you got a couple 100 pounds of it. Get a little bit of money. And as crazy as that sounds, it doesn't take much to stack up a few 100 pounds of brass if you like to shoot. Is a bayonet useful for anything? Yeah. It was useful in combat. Are you going to hunt with it? Nah. Are you going to use it for home defense? I hope not. Because I would hate to think I had to defend myself with this. These bayonets were designed as a last-ditch effort for combat troops. They're out of ammo, they're charging. And frankly, it was, hopefully you were able to kill them before they kill you. But it was one-on-one, very last minute. Another reason they had a steel butt plate. It wasn't to be nice and comfortable on the shoulder, which these aren't. It was for wham! Again, this was designed for military use. Reliability. I have fired a handful of these. I've never had reliability issues, no matter the manufacturer, whether Chinese, Yugoslav, Russian, etc. I've personally never had a failure to feed, failure to fire, etc. I have heard of a few, but they are reliable. Are they as bulletproof as, say, an AK-47? In my opinion, yes. Many people will not agree with me, but I have seen these filthy and rusty, etc. Open them up, squirt some oil in them, work the action a few times, load them up, and boom, 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 boom. They're reliable. They do need to stay a little cleaner than an AK-47. As a general rule, they're a little tighter built. But believe it or not, you can get an AK dirty enough it doesn't fire as well, and I've seen that happen. But it does not have a detachable magazine. You can buy the detachable magazines. Be very careful. Many guys will buy one of these rifles, buy a couple of detachable magazines, take all this apart, start putting them on. There are federal laws that regulate what you can do with this weapon. And in order to properly convert that, there is a certain number of parts that have to be replaced with U.S. manufactured parts. So be very careful when you do that. Don't just grab it, change out the mags. Because you may find yourself on the wrong end of the law by mistake. You can buy those magazines anywhere, but again, be careful. Look up the laws. I won't go into the legality. I don't know all of it. You may not agree with me. But please, search out for yourself before you make any type of modifications like that to to an SKS. I won't go into other weapons, but to an SKS. Be very, very careful before you use things like that. Plus, the ones that I fired that had those detachable mags, I haven't found one that was very reliable. And I've shot a handful of manufacturers. The magazines just didn't feed that well. The gun didn't cycle well with them, etc. Plus, hey, it holds 10 rounds. Most guys are going to buy this just to play on the range, to hunt with, etc. In many cases, for hunting, you're going to have to put a wooden block in here to get it even less than 10. Many states require 5. But most states have a maximum of 10 for a self-loading rifle. Do you need more than 10? Probably not. Maybe, depending on what you're doing. But to get the most reliability out of this rifle, you're probably better off just sticking with this. Get you a handful of stripper clips. Learn how to load the ammo onto them. Learn how to reload them with these. It's fairly fast. Yes, it doesn't have 30-round magazine. It doesn't have 40s, 50s, drums, etc. But you can have a lot of fun. You can throw a lot of lead downrange with this rifle. All steel manufacturer, hardwood stock. If you buy one, be careful. Sometimes the bores are fairly worn. So look at that. They may have some wear at the muzzle because they came with this steel cleaning rod, and over years, if it's one that was hard used, over the years of this, you can wear out where the muzzle crown is. Actually, it looks like this one may have been recrowned. It's nice and clean, a nice chamfer cut. I'm not sure that it was. It may have been, it may not have been, but this does have an outstandingly clean bore. No pits, no gouge marks, etc. It's in really good shape. I can't wait to fire it. Hopefully I'll take you guys along with me for a range session at some point. But there it is. A reliable gun, similar to a 30-30, not quite as powerful. You can use it for hunting up to, say, deer-sized game. It actually makes an excellent predator rifle for close range. Close range being under 100 yards. Makes an excellent predator rifle for coyotes, etc. Lots of guys use them for feral hogs. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Generally, those are shot at close range as well. Great for punching paper at the range. Excellent for that. Low recoil, good for introducing new shooters to centerfire rifles. If you can find one at a decent price, I say pick one up. If you have one that's just been collecting dust in the closet, clean it, get it out, shoot it. The ammo's cheap. The ammo's going to continue to be cheap because the manufacturers that make this stuff, prices are going to go up, but it's always going to be cheap ammo. You just can't go wrong. Fun to shoot. Low recoil. Fairly accurate for what it is. Reliable. It's not an AR-15. It's not an AK-47. But it's pretty cool. Well, we got to this part of the video as I'm closing out. I want you to remember that Christ is King. Remember, like I've said in many of my other videos, that you hear that, has a little tug in your heart. Seek that out. God's talking to you. If you got any questions about my faith, about accepting Christ as your personal Savior, put it, just say something in the comments. You don't have to voice the question. Say something in the comments. We'll talk. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to fire this bad boy soon. And I'll see you next time.